What's up, YouTube? I am the Vanilla Nerd, and today I want to talk about Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. This is a really fun movie. I'm excited to get into it. But before we do, I do want to give a quick spoiler warning for this film. I will be spoiling it from start to finish, so if you haven't seen it, get out now. It's a great flick. Definitely recommend you go see it before you get it spoiled by me. But secondly, I do want to give a little minor spoilers for the movie that preceded this, the Jumanji that came out in 1995. While this movie is kind of a sequel to that film, it's more pays homage to that film, and I'll be talking about some of those homages in this review. So minor spoilers for the 1995 film that starred the late, great Robin Williams. Anywho, without any further ado, let's get into this review. So, overall, I think this movie was a lot of fun. I don't think it was super deep or anything, but it told an entertaining story with some fun action and hilarious comedy. And that's what matters. And that's not to say I didn't enjoy the more serious, character-focused moments. In fact, I really enjoyed Bethany's arc in particular. But I don't think anyone's sitting down to watch Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle for the various inspirational messages in the film sprinkles in. Messages like you only have one life and using it well, or looking outside of yourself. While those messages are valuable and do help elevate the movie, they aren't the focus of the story, and that's okay. I love a fun popcorn action movie that has heart, and that's what this film is. Now, I'll come back to the themes, but for right now, I want to talk about the premise of this movie, because I thought this was a really fun take on the Jumanji concept. Turning Jumanji into a video game made it more fun and entertaining in a lot of ways than the original film. The 1995 film with Robin Williams had a few funny moments, but it focused more on the terrible consequences and borderline horror that came with the game of Jumanji. I think that's fine, and clearly that movie has become a classic, but I personally prefer this film, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, more, because it had more comedy, more action, and a more engaging plot. That's just my opinion, however. If you liked the original film more, that's totally valid. To each their own. Regardless, I'm honestly a little bothered that this film, Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle, is considered Jumanji 2, because it's such a departure in tone and concept from the previous movie. It just feels entirely distinct. However, when you look online, this one technically comes up as Jumanji 2, and that just kind of bothers me. It's okay, though. That being said, I did really appreciate all the Easter eggs and nods to the original Jumanji film that appear in this movie. Notably, Mr. Vreek, the father of the pilot dude, finds the Jumanji board game washed up on a beach, which connects to the fact that the board game was last found on a beach by two French girls at the end of the 1995 Jumanji film. I guess those two girls decided to throw the board game back into the ocean, presumably after beating the game themselves. Plus, the prologue of this movie takes place in 1996, 1 year after the events of the original film. So that's kind of cool. Also, having the elephant piece be the prize from the Black Mamba snake was a really fun hint at the other character, the pilot, coming in. Having Alex, the pilot, live in Alan Parrish's house was a really fun connection. It makes it feel like this jungle world of Jumanji that exists inside the video game has always existed since the beginning of the board game, and this is where all the creatures come from that enter into our world. And now the game has just adapted itself to bring everyone into its world and change the rules of its own world to become that of a video game, if that makes any sense, if you're tracking. But I think it's a really cool connection how that all worked. This is the jungle that Alan Parrish went to when he was trapped for 30 or so odd years in the original game. And in a lot of ways, this movie, Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle, was even structured the same as the 1995 film, because it starts with a foreboding prologue of some kid, in this case Alex Vreek, the pilot, getting sucked into the video game 20 years prior to the main events of the film. Just as Jumanji 1995 started with Alan Parrish getting sucked into the jungle back in 1969, when he and Sarah first started playing, prior to the main events of that movie, which took place in 1995. But speaking of the prologue to this movie, this is where one of my first critiques of this film comes in, because the beginning of this film, which starts in the real world, feels like a necessary appetizer you have to eat before you can get to the main course. Like, it just feels like we're waiting until we can finally get to the game world. Now, don't get me wrong, I think this setup in the real world is very important and very crucial to making the movie work. We have to understand who the characters of Spencer, Fridge, Bethany, and Martha are before we can understand how they're reacting differently in the world of Jumanji. Plus, there are a lot of fun payoffs that happen at the end of the movie as a result of all the setup that happened at the beginning. But still, every time I watch the beginning of Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle, I feel like I'm just twiddling my thumbs until we finally jump into Jumanji, you know? Regardless, we do eventually make it into the world of Jumanji, and herein lies the crux of the comedy, the body swap. And I love this concept. It is so funny to see The Rock act like a scaredy cat nerd, Karen Gillan act like an insecure teenage girl, Kevin Hart act like an athletic jock, and Jack Black, of course, as a teenage girl who's way too into her phone and looks. The general consensus I hear on the execution of this is that Jack Black knocked it out of the park, and Kevin Hart kind of just played himself. I don't entirely disagree with this, but I do think this is a little harsh to Kevin Hart, because I feel like the other characters were given really easy stereotypes to play into. Like, this isn't to take away from the acting of any of the other characters, but Kevin Hart was supposed to play a jock that wasn't your typical jock. Like, the whole point of Fridge's character was that he was smart. It wasn't that he was a jock because he couldn't do school, he was a jock because he was hyper-focused on sports. If we look at all the other characters, they aren't trying to break away from their stereotypes. Spencer and Martha are both nerds, and Bethany is your stereotypical teenage girl. Those are all super easy stereotypes to play into, but Kevin Hart has to play a jock that is also smart, and that's a little challenging. Again, I don't want to take away from the acting of any of the other actors because at the end of the day, all of them, including Kevin Hart, did a great job. They made me laugh and they made me believe that they really were the embodiment of Spencer, Martha, Bethany, and Fridge. Plus, Kevin Hart's just a funny guy, so I don't really care if he leans more into himself than Fridge. But I digress. I will say, if you think Kevin Hart was the weak link, I think that's a valid critique. It's just not one that ruins the movie for me. Moving on, we have the plot of this movie, and I think it's a little progressional in that you move from one mini game to the next, but that's totally okay because it's supposed to be a video game. It's supposed to feel that way, so it works. And that's not to say there weren't surprises. I particularly enjoyed how the Black Mamba mini game started with us thinking Bethany has to stare down the snake, but then quickly changed completely to Fridge defanging the snake. Or when Fridge drops the jewel into the pack of albino rhinos, and that was pretty fun and clearly not part of the original game plan. Speaking of which, all of the action scenes of this movie were a lot of fun. I loved seeing The Rock have super strong punches and fight everyone in the market. I loved seeing Martha realize early on as Ruby Roundhouse that she has these gymnastic skills, so she starts knocking bad guys off their bikes. And at the end, where they return the jewel to the statue, it's really fun to see the payoff to all of their characters' skills coming together in order to make that final climax work, and it was just really entertaining. But for the rest of the review, I want to talk about the various arcs each of the characters go on, starting with Spencer. Spencer becomes more confident, rekindles his friendship with Fridge, and of course confesses his feelings to Martha, which is great. In particular, I loved seeing The Rock freak out when his character Spencer learns from Fridge that Martha likes him. He shouted, "What?" And it was great. It was just very, very funny. Moving on to Fridge, his arc is a bit harder to nail down, partially because he goes against type as we already discussed, and partially because Kevin Hart leans into playing himself, which again, we already talked about. But I do love seeing the pride on his face at defanging a snake. Not only was it a funny moment, but personally I think it shows him learning to value knowledge and, quote, nerdier things, going along that typical jock comes around on the nerdy stuff arc that they kind of flirted with in this movie, but didn't talk about a whole bunch, right? Plus, him choosing to be friends with Spencer again is really sweet. We never really had a scene where he apologized for pushing Spencer away, which I think is unfortunate, but I do like that they both learned to respect and trust each other by the end of this movie. Moving on to Martha, I love seeing her gain respect for Bethany. More than that, she gains a friendship with Bethany, but also learning to be confident in herself and who she is amazing. That's just super fun to see. The scene where she tries to flirt with the two guards is super funny. Karen Gillan does such a good job acting uncomfortable and just being bad at flirting. Side note though, I really don't love the song that they chose for her to dance fight to. Baby, I Love Your Way by Big Mountain, because to me, it just isn't a bop. It's not very fun. I recognize some people would disagree and think it's the perfect song for her to dance to, but for me, it's just always been something that's held this movie back a little bit. It just didn't get me excited or pumped. But it works, I guess. It's not terrible. Finally, we have Jack Black, who, as mentioned previously, knocked it out of the park. I believe hook, line, and sinker that he is a teenage girl in this movie. The mannerisms, the way he talks, the way he walks, it all works so well. His scenes were the funniest in the movie by far. In particular, I love when he's teaching Karen Gillan's character how to flirt. Both of them did such a good job selling that scene. In that moment, I believe that Karen Gillan has no idea how to flirt, and I believe 100% that Jack Black knows exactly how to be a girl and how to flirt with guys. It is so funny. It is so good. That being said, I do want to mention that there are some jokes that Jack Black has that are a little crude, a little crass for my tastes. It doesn't ruin the movie for me, but it's definitely not something that I personally appreciate. It's just not something I like, especially since most of it felt a tad unnecessary. Like, did we really need to see the characters go to the bathroom in this movie? I don't think so. Not personally. Regardless, finishing out with Bethany's arc, I really love how she learns to care about other people. At the start of this movie, it is very clear that she's only into herself. The movie, through her teacher, calls it out for us even. But I love how she meets the pilot Alex Freak. She thinks he's cute and decides to help him. Even though she saves his life out of a selfish desire to hopefully date him, it ends up working the other way in reverse because she realizes how rewarding it was to truly help someone else. Plus, the rest of the group were all in the same predicament as her, so I can understand why their challenges don't really appear that difficult compared to her, at least from her mind's eye, right? But when she hears that Alex has been trapped in this world for 20 years and has had his life ripped away from him, it makes her genuinely stop and examine her problems and realize, wow, I do not have it the worse. Plus, her friendship with Martha helped her realize that maybe being so focused on her body and her looks aren't the healthiest mindset. Not to mention the fact that she was stuck in a middle-aged man. Kudos to Jack Black for being willing to insult himself. But of course, the payoff to Bethany's arc is at the end of the film where she meets an adult Alex. Again, I love that this film matched the internal rules of the 1995 film and had Alex return to the spot he left, effectively altering history to a history where he now has a family and his dad isn't a creep. Of course, this is sad for Bethany, who was hopeful that a relationship might form, but now that's clearly not possible. However, her service was still meaningful because Alex named his daughter after her, quote, the woman who saved his life. The smile that Bethany has when she realizes that she truly helped someone else is so powerful and super touching. I just love it so much. But that's all the major themes and character arcs for this movie. Lastly, I just kind of want to address the ending. Once again, I appreciate the homage to the first film with the kids destroying Jumanji in an attempt to stop anyone else from befalling the fate of Jumanji. This time they use a bowling ball to destroy the game console, and that was really fun. But I also appreciate that they left room in this movie open for a sequel by having Spencer at the end, before he shakes the guy's hand and leaves Jumanji, he tells Martha, hey, stay with me. Let's just stay here. This should be a lot of fun. And Martha's like, no, let's go back to the real world. Good on Martha, by the way. But it left the door open because we see, Spencer might like Jumanji, like the superpowers, like the extra lives. And that's interesting. But that's a conversation for the next movie. Again, no spoilers here for that movie. Just theorizing based on the end of that film. This film. So, in short, I love Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle. This is a really fun movie. It has an entertaining premise, some really solid action, hilarious comedy, and a touch of heart that I appreciate. I know this film is kind of a throwback, but what did you guys think of Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Tell me all your thoughts in the comments down below. But for now, this is Vanilla Nerd signing off.